see you again.
I know you look so good.
Oh, girl, you do too.
Thanks. So where are you right now?
Right now, I'm in Calgary. I just been doing about 11 days of camping through the Canadian Rockies with one of my good friends, and now I'm just taking a few days to recuperate in the city, and it's beautiful. I feel like Calgary is going to be the Denver of Canada. It's really interesting. It reminds me a lot of Denver, and I feel like the real estate is going to be popping here in like 5 to 10 years.
Okay, are you staying at a Airbnb right now?
Yeah, I'm staying at this lovely Airbnb. It is awesome. The luxury of having a hot, warm shower is wonderful.
Yeah, because you've been camping for a few weeks, right?
Yeah, it's been I want to say 11 nights so far. So showering like once a week kind of thing with a lukewarm shower is interesting.
Oh my goodness. And how many weeks more do you have of camping after this?
After this, so we have like one more night in Calgary, which will be tonight, and then we'll probably do about, I want to say 4 to 6 days of camping, and then we'll be heading back to Whistler.
Okay. Well, this is so exciting. This is like
Hmm.
crazy, right? Like I'm so glad to be speaking to you right now through Zoom. And this is the first episode of my
Hmm.
podcast, which you encouraged me to make. So I have you to thank a lot for that. So for the listeners, this is my friend Emily. We actually met very randomly on a plane. And she, motivated me a lot to start this podcast. And I kind of been wanting to for a couple of years, but, never really thought it was going to be a reality. And sometimes it just takes that person, I guess, to kind of push you and give you ideas and motivate you. So we kept in touch afterwards, and she kept motivating me and telling me, what I should do to kind of plan and create a vision for this. So I'm so honored to have her on the first episode. So do you want to tell them how we met, or should I tell
Yeah,
them
sure. I
how
guess I will take the reins. So I was sitting there, minding my own business, just like super jet lagged, and was like, oh gosh, I hope my flights don't get canceled. And there's this lovely woman next to me, and she saw this book that I had. So I've been trying to read through this. Of course, it's like the one that everyone's reading, but it's the subtle art of not giving a fuck. And sometimes I give too many fucks. And I really enjoyed this book so far. So Roxy was sitting next to me, this lovely lady, and just asked me like questions about it. Of course, anytime someone has a conversation with me, I start like becoming chatty Cathy, and I will talk a mile a minute. And I realized that we are very similar in our passions of wanting to communicate with other people and create communities. And so here we are, starting a podcast.
I love your version of the story. So I guess I'll tell you what I remember. I was on the plane with my husband next to me, and it was one of those times where it was like, you're tired and you don't want to talk to anyone. So you're just like, okay, I'm just gonna sleep through this whole flight. So I think, did I have my eye mask on? I don't think I had my eye mask on during that
I
part of
had
the
mine on for part of it.
So I was like sleeping the whole time. I didn't even know when someone sat next to me. And then by the time that I woke up, it was like towards the end of our flight. And then I look over and I'm like, oh, this girl has a book that I've been trying to read for a while. So this is a perfect, chance to bring it up. And I'm like, should I? Should I not? Okay, fine. Let me ask her how she likes this book, even though I was trying to just sleep through this whole flight. Uh, but yeah, can you imagine if I hadn't, then we would have never, like connected like
Right?
this and, became friends over it. So I'm really glad I did. And, this hopefully this encourages you to try to speak to the person that you're sitting next to in the future when you're mile high in the sky. But Emily was just like immediately, like the first question I asked you, like immediately you just like opened up and was like super ecstatic. Like I couldn't tell you were jet lag at all. You just had all this energy to share.
I was so tired. Oh my
Okay, so the crazy thing is, why were you on the flight? Like, why? What brought you in my path to begin with? I think that's a crazier story.
Oh my gosh. So I'm just a hot mess express train. That is something I've accepted in my life. I had plans to go to Canada and I had this elaborate plan to go see my friends up in Canada and go to Vancouver, Whistler, hike some mountains in the Canadian Rockies. And in the middle of like all of this planning and a couple weeks before going up to Canada, I found out that my good friend had just got diagnosed with lymphoma cancer. So, of course, as a human natural reaction, and instead of dealing with my emotions, I was partying and was like, being a hot mess express train, and I lost my passport. And I realized I lost my passport the night before I was going to drive up to the Canadian border. I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe this just happened. I cannot believe this. I am so irresponsible. And that's when the next day I went to a Starbucks and just, you know, logistically trying to figure out how to get an emergency passport or like an express passport. And with all the COVID restrictions and regulations, the only appointment I could get was in El Paso, Texas. And at this moment, I was in Seattle or the greater Seattle area. I was like, well, I guess I'm going to book a flight to El Paso, Texas. I've never been there. I want to check it out, blah, blah, blah. And it ends up being like a really cool city. I really liked El Paso. They have a beautiful art scene. So I booked a flight, went to El Paso, got my passport, checked out some of the museums. And then the only reason why I was on that flight with you was because of the flood flashes. I wasn't supposed to originally be on that flight.
Oh, where were you supposed to be at first?
I had a different flight that was flying out earlier that day, but it got delayed. And my layover, because of the delay, my layover, I wouldn't have made it over to my second flight to make it back to Seattle. So I ended up switching my flights to a later flight and one with a longer layover, which we weren't originally supposed to be on that flight together, but because of the flood flashes, we were on that flight together. Isn't that weird?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like that wasn't my original flight path. And then it's
Well, I did
really
not know that.
it's so weird. So yeah, I ended up booking that flight because of all the flight cancellations and all that stuff. And like,
Okay. So you could have
yeah,
very
it's
well flown into a complete different connecting airport, or
mhm.
at least an earlier flight for that.
Yeah. So yeah, now that was a really expensive mistake. Um yeah, that was I think like 700 USDs.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
because of the flights, Airbnb. Also, like I'm bougie, so I wanted to eat at all the nice restaurants when I was in town.
I saw
But
that. Like you, okay, so El Paso, everyone know, well, I don't know about everyone, but a lot of people know at like the best restaurant here, the fanciest, nicest restaurant is called Cafe Central. And I saw that you put in your story that you ate there. And I'm like, I've lived here most of my life and I have not even eaten there.
it's
And
really
I'm like,
good.
this girl.
It's so tasty. I mean, honestly, go for the lunchtime. Don't even get the entrees. Just like order like three appetizers because their appetizers are so good and they have a phenomenal bread selection. Like I love their bread. They had all these bougie types of bread, and I'm such a breadhead, so I was like,
Did you have to make a reservation or you just showed up?
no, I just showed up. And they do have a dress code for their inside dining, but if you dine in the patio area, it's a little bit more casual because I was carrying around my Cotopaxi and like my hiking gear, and I was wearing chacos, which are like sandals. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is this that type of restaurant where they're not going to let me dine because I'm dressed like this? I'm like, this is like so obnoxious. And they're like, no, you can dine here. You just can't dine inside. You're going to have to dine in the patio. I was like, that's fine. I
Hmm.
don't care. The food tastes the same.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. That's crazy. That's like serendipity that you like ended up on that flight when you weren't even supposed to. And yeah, there's been a lot of flash floods lately, like all over Texas. It's been kind of crazy.
Oh yeah.
But it's much more green. Like our mountains here are super green. I mean, when you were here, you were able to see that our beautiful mountains, and they're usually not like that. They're usually more of like a reddish color because of I think it's iron deposits, but lately it's been really green and really beautiful. What else did you get to do when you were in El Paso?
I got some tattoos. Yeah.
What? Okay,
Yeah.
this
I was
is
like,
news to me.
yeah, I got this tattoo, which means well, not means, but it says perseverance. I got a semicolon for mental health awareness,
Mhm.
a paper airplane, and then the other one I got while I was there was this like camping thing.
Oh, okay.
Minimalist.
And for anyone who's listening, we are putting this on YouTube afterwards. So Emily just went through and showed a collage of all her body parts. So make sure
It's
you
gonna
watch
cost you
that.
$1 more if without the clothes.
That's on a different topic. We'll save that for later. So, okay, wait. So you got all those tattoos when you were in El Paso?
Yeah.
What?
Um, and how I got to that tattoo shop was I met this guy, his name is Tafari, at the Box Coffee Shop. Have you heard of that place?
Yeah, the coffee box, right?
Yeah, the coffee
Mm-hmm.
box where it's in a
Downtown.
storage thing. And yeah, I made some friends there and was just hanging out, and he had a bunch of tattoos. So I asked him what his favorite tattoo shop was, which I don't know. I don't remember the name on top of my head, but I'll send it to you later. That way you can link it down. But yeah, and he was super nice. I was able to snag an appointment that day. So while I was waiting for that appointment, I ended up eating at that bougie restaurant. And so I went to the tattoo shop, and Tafari, he left me a sandwich. He was so nice. And I was
Oh.
like, oh my gosh, I already ate, but like I'll eat the sandwich like tonight. And I ended up getting like, I had leftover Texas barbecue and I put it in that sandwich and ate it because it was a vegetarian sandwich. And I was like, well, I don't want to waste my leftovers. So yeah, that's what I did.
I can't believe that. Like, who does that? Like, who does that oh, I'm only in the city for a few days. It was unplanned. Um, I am gonna go ask a stranger where's the best place to get tattoos, and I'm gonna do it. I'm actually gonna do it.
It was fun. Well, I had nothing else to do, and I felt like this passport situation was very connected to my favorite word, which is perseverance. And yeah, I mean, like other people think I'm just crazy and stubborn and won't accept the fact that I lost my passport. But I was like, my other friend, he doesn't have a passport and was on a waiting list for I think like 12 or 18 weeks.
Oh
I was like,
gosh.
nope, I got an appointment within a week.
So the appointment you had was here, like at I guess the immigration office. That did they have to interview you, or you just had to like sign something to get your emergency passport?
It was a lengthy process. So I was on the phone for an hour and just like telling them all the stuff. So the regulations with it, you have to have some sort of hotel booking or Airbnb booking within 72 hours of travel time. And I already had an Airbnb booked with my friend. And I ended up not being able to make any of those days. So he got to experience this bougie Airbnb all to himself. So lucky for him. But yeah, I already had all the booking and all this stuff. And then on top of it, you had to have like some sort of valid reason to travel to Canada, and all these other stuff. So it was like a lot of loopholes that I had to jump. Yeah, it was draining. And on top of it, I had to have my birth certificate and all of these like documents So I'm like calling up my old roommate in Denver. I'm like, yo, Priscilla, can you go through my storage unit? Because I left my spare storage unit keys with them in Denver. And I was like, I need, please do me a solid. And so she went through my storage unit, grabbed all the documents I needed, and expedite shipped it to the Airbnb I was at.
Oh my gosh. So
Yeah.
moral of the story, don't
Don't
lose
lose your
your
passport.
passport. Don't ever lose your passport, guys. Unless you have really good friends that are willing to help you dig through your storage locker and sign papers for you. So you can... Well, I'm glad. So you have your permanent passport now, or you're still
Yeah.
waiting?
No, I have my passport. And I ended up buying a passport card too. So in case if I do lose the passport, I have the card as a backup because the card lets you in to Canada and Mexico.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Pro tip. That's good to know.
And
So,
it's only like I think $30 more for the card.
okay. So what else have you seen in Canada? Any adventures since you've been there? And what else do you plan on doing while you're there?
Oh my gosh, it's been such a beautiful experience. So Canada is just, oh, it's so gorgeous. People are friendly. I remember and I were camping our first night, and we ended up not snagging a camping spot at the campground that we are gonna go to. So we did some like dispersed camping or whatever, and I was freaking out because in the States, if you are camped or trespassing on private property, you're going to get shot at. I mean, that's just, and it's not considered murder because you're trespassing. um and I was like telling him, I was like, dude, like, I don't know if this is private property. It looks like it's a logging facility, and if it is, it's private property, we're going to get shot at. And he just looks at me and goes like, this is Canada. Like, this is not the States. People are just going to ask you to leave very kindly. And I looked at him and was like, wait, what? You what? And I had this like culture shock moment because like I'm constantly in this like moment of survival of like, am I going to be in a shooting? Is someone going to shoot at me? And all this stuff. Like, I'm not anti-gun at all. Like, I actually really like guns. But there is that mentality that you have in the States. So there was that major culture shock because right before I got to Canada, I was in an active shooting in Portland, in downtown Portland. So that was like really weird. I've never been in an active shooting before. So that was like really strange. I was just trying to get some food, some fries. um Luckily my friend and I didn't get hurt, but two ladies ended up getting shot at. So that was really peculiar. Another thing I would say is I made friends with my last Airbnb host in Vancouver. And she's this like badass woman, got featured on Forbes. Her name is Ava, and she's just so inspiring. And she's part of Canadian Passive Investing. That's her company that she started from the ground up. And it's just like seeing a gorgeous woman that also has brains, like just like you. Like, I love being surrounded around empowering women. And so that was like just having that human interaction with Ava and you and all this stuff. That's been beautiful. But I think one of my favorite things so far is just eating. The food in Canada is so good. Oh my gosh, it's so like authentic. Like, there's so many Japanese restaurants here, so many ramen shops, and a lot of the places it seems like you went and flew to the country and you're eating at like a lot of the places they don't even have English written down. Like, they just have like the number, like number one, number two, number three, and then it's all written in their language. And I was like, this is what I like. That's probably the biggest thing I would say that I really enjoy. And then in Canada also, it's required to have everything in English and French.
Mm.
Where in the States, like, I feel like everything should be in English and Spanish, but it's not required.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of places do have it, but it's not expected, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I know the high a French population in Canada, and I know they're, they have a lot of other immigrants as well, which is probably the reason for the amount of authentic ethnic cuisines that they have there. That's really good to hear. Yeah, I've only had the privilege of spending one whole day in Vancouver a few years ago when my husband and I were in Seattle and we decided to rent a car to drive up to Vancouver. And we only spent a day there. It was beautiful. We went to, I think it was called Granville Island, and they had a farmer's market there, and they had, people playing music, and it was just amazing. Like it was like the happiest day of our lives. I feel like you just like felt, I don't know, it's like indescribable. Like you just feel like this lightness to your step when you're there, and all the people that were around. Everyone looked healthy and happy and fit, and you're right about them being very friendly over there. And then after we spent some time at the farmers market, I believe we went downtown, and we ate at like a vegan Chinese restaurant.
Ooh.
So that was really cool. Yeah, we definitely would have wished we got to spend more time there, but definitely enjoy it like while you're there. Okay, so Calgary is, I know it's Alberta, so that's like more in the middle, right?
Yeah, I would say it's like, I wouldn't say it's right down in the middle of Canada. I think it's just north of Montana, that
Okay,
state.
that makes sense. Yeah.
So it's like a little bit more to the west of the middle, just a dash bit. It's kind of like how like where Denver's situated, but a little bit more west, I believe.
Okay, yeah.
Um, yeah, it's awesome. I love Calgary. I like it for the convenience because it's suburbia, but there's also a pretty decent downtown, and it's an hour from the mountains.
Oh.
It's awesome. Like you're literally an hour from Canmore, and Canmore honestly is way better than Banff. Um, I'm not hating on Banff, but it felt very touristy when I was there. And that's like the one where like everyone goes to is like Lake Louise and all that stuff. And so I enjoyed Canmore a lot more. It reminded me of the small mountain town I lived in Colorado. Um, and it was just very quaint. Like the food there was great also, and it was a little bit more affordable because it's not in a very touristy area. I'm trying to think of anywhere else I really enjoyed. Jasper was way cooler than Banff as well. I feel like it wasn't as crowded either. Oh, and I went to Lake Louise and we went swimming in that water. It was really cold.
Was it cold?
It was freezing. I told him, I was like, we have to at least do it, even if it's for 30 seconds, because like when else are we gonna be here and say we
Yes.
swam in Lake Louise?
I hope you got videos of that, like swimming in that water.
I don't think we did because
Oh
we were
no.
both so cold. I he did get a video of me swimming in an alpine lake in Jasper. Yeah, that was really interesting. He was like, "This is so cold. What are you doing?" I was like, "This is like my natural habitat. I love it."
Oh my goodness. Well, whatever you do, have Emily is going to send to me, and I will be posting to Instagram. So
Okay,
that's
you sound
where,
great.
yes, that's where everyone can see you swimming in this cold water and your camping adventures in Canada.
Sounds great.
But tell us a little bit more about your lifestyle as a whole. I only got to speak to you for like that last 20 minutes portion of our flight, but I feel like I got to hear a lot about you, and there's only so much more that I like to uncover.
I've been whatchamacallit? I've been basically nomadic since December 2020. So the quarantine happened, pandemic happened, COVID effed everything up in life, and I got furloughed twice in 9 months. And I started reevaluating everything. I was like, okay, if I stay in Denver, I'm gonna blow through my savings, but I'll be able to snowboard for the entire season and go to these world-class mountains. But with how COVID was going, I wasn't sure if the ski resorts were going to close again. So I had the option to defer my pass to next year. So that's what I ended up doing. I ended up deferring my pass to next year. I packed up my things, put it in a storage unit, and I headed back to the East Coast where I'm originally from. I'm originally from Northern Virginia. And I asked my mom, I was like, hey, yo, mom, can I move back into the basement for a little bit? So that's what I did. But since my rent was like a quarter or like an eighth of what I was paying in Denver, I packed up my things, and mom was like totally cool with me not paying for rent for the first couple months because I wasn't gonna be at the house. I just had my stuff there. So she's like, don't worry about it. You're fine, blah, blah, blah. And so I packed up my car and just traveled the Southeast. I went down to Georgia, North and South Carolina, as well as Florida and Louisiana. And I have a bunch of friends on that side of the country as well. And I really wanted to see Florida. I wanted to be somewhere somewhat warm and see some of my old friends. One of the restaurants I used to work at, it's called Uchi, and they ended up opening up a location in Miami, which if you ever get a chance, I highly recommend it. They're very accommodating to vegan and vegetarian diets as well for being a sushi Japanese restaurant. My roommates are actually vegan, and I've taken them to that restaurant a few times, and they've always had a phenomenal time. So I wanted to go eat at the new location of the restaurant I used to work at, as well as see my old coworkers and friends. So I did that from December 2020 till about late April. And I packed up my things again from Virginia, headed back west to Denver. And I was there for about a week, going through my storage unit, buying some stuff. I ended up buying a bike rack and a bike for myself so I could cycle through the cities on the West Coast. And I packed up my things again and headed west. And that's where I started my ventures of woofing, which is basically working on all organic farms in exchange for free housing and food. And that's one of the biggest part of travel expenses is housing and food. So the first farm I worked at was Seed Ascension, and we'll set up the link and all that as well so people have the connection to that. So I went to Seed Ascension. It is an all organic regenerative cannabis farm. And it was a beautiful experience. It's a queer farm as well. So it was super awesome to be at a farm and water plants in my itty bitty bikinis and not be objectified. So that was super awesome.
Please tell me you have pictures of you in your itty bitty bikinis watering crops.
Oh, I have a video of me watering some of the crops.
Or feeding farm animals in your itty bitty bikini.
Oh yeah, I was definitely.
That is priceless.
So there was alpacas there, and an alpaca butt is so much fluffier than a corgi butt, and it's great. I love the alpacas, although alpacas are pretty aggressive. They are technically wild animals, and they can be very, what's the word I'm looking for? Territorial.
Okay.
They can be quite territorial. So this was a gorgeous farm. I believe it was like 40 to 60 acres or something like that. It was a beautiful property right in Sonoma County. And it was very, very remote. So I was there for about a month, and they had two different shifts. They have one shift in the morning and then one shift in the afternoon. And I did the morning shift on farming and learning about compost and different types of composting, where the second shift, I ended up cooking a meal there. And all the other farmers on the property loved my cooking. They were very enamored with my cooking skills. So the rest of the time I was there, my second shift was cooking for the crew. So when I was there, I was able to curate over like 50 farm to table concept meals. It was amazing. I loved it. I got to make vegan meals as well as conventional meat oriented meals as well. And it was so I was able to create, and I'll send you the videos and photos that I have. And the shift was like 3 to 4 hours. So I was cooking for like 3 to 4 hours on my second shift. And it was just such a beautiful connection I had that I've never had in the past with food. I had such a beautiful connection. Like I was able to grow and harvest these vegetables and fruits and create a meal out of it. And I feel like in the States, a lot of people have such a disconnect with their food.
Right. I was joking with my husband yesterday that, if you find an American that like knows how to cut an onion or dice a potato, then that's already pretty good.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so farm to table, that's definitely a concept that I think everyone should adopt. I see some restaurants now in America adopting that. Actually, there's a local diner in El Paso that there's this couple, they have a family. I hope to have them on the podcast soon as well. And they do that. They have, like a community garden, and they do use some of the produce that they produce into their menu. And I love that. And I think it's really like you said, it's just fulfilling, like not only for the farmer or the business owner, but also for the customers, and even for volunteers. They take volunteers too, where it's like you volunteer for an hour and you get a meal for free. So they support a lot of like the homeless community here, or those that are lower income, to just lend a hand and you get a free meal.
Mhm.
So that's amazing. And I would love to hear more about your farm adventures. So where did you stay? Like, did they have like a room for you at the farmhouse, or did they have you in a private quarter?
So each farm is different. At this first farm I was at, I was fortunate enough to have my own trailer. So it was great. I had my own little kitchenette, my own queen size bed. They even put fresh sheets on there for me, and they were so kind and generous with the space. And I had my own little table as well in there. Of course, it wasn't like a bougie Airbnb like where I'm at right now, but it had the basic necessities. I had running water. I had all the necessities I needed. And when I got there, they ended up just finishing building an outdoor shower and composting toilet. So this outdoor shower, oh my gosh, like I was like thinking I should open up an OnlyFans of just me showering in this like outdoor shower. This is great. Like it was so magical. It was at the top of the mountain, and you would just be immersed in forest, and it just was so gorgeous. I felt like a forest fairy just showering and bathing. And then the composting toilet had the same exact view. So I just was like, after my morning cup of coffee, I'd go and do my business and shower. And it was just so serene and calming. And all you could hear are birds chirping in the morning. And it was so immersive in nature.
I love
Uh,
it. Forest Fairy.
yeah, I loved it. I felt like an Asian Tinkerbell or something. I'm pretty sure there is an Asian Tinkerbell in the series.
There is, I think, I don't know her name, but I think she wears purple and she has something with the water, like she has long black hair.
Yeah, it's like a long black hair and a ponytail, I think.
I can't remember,
I
but
don't,
there is one. So
yeah.
hey, shout out to representation.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you said it was called Wolf. How do you spell that, this program?
It's WWOOF. It's a membership. I believe it's like 55 or $65 a year. For couples, it's a little bit more, but it's basically like Facebook for farmers. It's a networking system for organic farmers. Because if you truly think about farming and not subsidized farming by the government, like how in the States, corn farms are subsidized by the government. Most of these farmers, they end up not, they're making it paycheck to paycheck, and they're doing it out of straight like passion. And a lot of the times, I think a lot of people forget with organic farming, if there's any residue from the surrounding areas with pesticides, that get into the soil content. And when they test the organic crops, and if there's any signs of pesticides, it's not considered organic anymore. So they end up losing all of their crop and they have to sell it as conventional. Um, and it's not their fault. It's the surrounding communities around them that are spraying these pesticides, and it's getting into the soil and literally killing the biodynamic diversity of different environments. It's really devastating to start looking into how corrupt a lot of the farming politics are like. It's definitely not for the organic farmers.
Yeah, it's really tricky because I did an internship before too in New York where we researched a lot about organic and the concept of organic and fair trade, sustainable um, living, as well as farming and producing products as well. And yeah, it's really, really devastating and shocking to learn about how difficult it is for these farmers to grow organic and to keep it organic, and the costs that are associated for them to be certified organic, to be USDA certified. So that's a lot of things that, most people don't think about. And it's really hard out there. Especially, for urban farmers, I know I used to live in Houston and they had a couple urban farms. And I know through what I've learned that I think there's even certain cities and states that are trying to help, young families move somewhere. They give you a plot of land maybe to continue I want to say art, but it's not, yeah, I guess the art of farming, or the sector of farming, because we need farmers, we need people to keep doing this. And if generations down, farmers' children, they don't want to do this anymore, then it's kind of a big problem. And for them to make it even harder, to be certified organic and to keep that certification. And there's, it's really no way for them to prevent runoff from conventional farms, or yeah, like runoff from nearby farms that are not organic. That's just really, really difficult. So that's really interesting that you got to learn all about that. How many of these wolf stays, I suppose, have you done?
I've done two so far. So the second one I did was a dry farming concept. So it was a small scale farm that was trying to transition away from irrigation and instead use the water that's being stored from the previous winter season. And it was up in Oregon as well, in this small town called Monroe. The name of the farm was Lilliputopia. It was a beautiful farm. They um this farm itself has a gift shop and they sell their own produce there, as well as supporting other local artists as well. So there's little gifts and knickknacks that you can get that are locally produced. And it was just a beautiful concept. I was only there for about a week. I ended up getting strep throat really bad. So I had to get a hotel to just, avoid spreading strep throat to the other farmers on the property. But they were so awesome and so friendly. It was a blast. I really enjoyed it. I'd never heard of dry farming before. That was a concept I've never heard of. And it's really interesting, especially when you start seeing a lot of these places that are going into droughts. I think it's important to kind of grasp the knowledge of dry farming and how helpful and beneficial it can be, especially in a state like California or something.
Wait, can you explain dry farming to all of us?
So my knowledge on it is quite limited. I will try to explain it in a way where I don't butcher the concept. So from what I know of, at this farm, what they did was they'll get, so if you think of trees, that's dry farming. We're not watering trees. what the root system what the root systems of a tree do is tap into the water source that's already in the ground that's been stored. So if you like, have you ever seen the movie Holes with Shia LaBeouf in it?
Mm-hmm.
And they like dig and dig and dig, and then they like find like a water source kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that happens in that movie. So when you have a root system that's healthy, it's able to, like a well, we dig into wells to grab a water source. So that's
Yes.
basically what these root systems are doing.
That happened in Minari.
I don't think
The
I've seen that.
the movie, it's pretty new. It's about this Korean immigrant family that started a farm in Arkansas.
Okay.
And yeah, they're a big, theme of the movie was their trouble with finding enough water to water the crops. So that I think that reminds me of what you're talking about, like digging until hopefully you reach a well and
Yeah.
water comes out.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. So that's basically what I translated what dry farming is. Is that the best way to explain it? Probably not.
It's okay.
But it
This
gets,
is this is new. Like this is we're all learning about this.
yeah.
Do you know if a lot of farmers are doing it or it's more like a
No.
growing concept?
From what I know of, no, because it is a more difficult type of farming. Also, depending on which region of the country you're in, there's different types of soil. Where, like where I was in Sonoma, it was more of like a sand and dirt concept, where in Oregon it was more clay based and it was really
Mm.
hard to work with. Like it got like rock solid. When we were harvesting elephant garlic, we needed like 3 people to harvest one.
What?
Yeah, like one person had to like plow into it with a hoe, and then another person had to, like, we had to grab a shovel at one point because it was so hard. Like even me jumping on it with my whole body weight was not enough, because that's how rock solid the soil was.
Wow. And this elephant garlic, it was absorbing water directly from its roots, and you guys
Yeah.
weren't watering it or anything.
I think they watered it once in a while, like when it really needed to be watered. But from
Mm-hmm.
what I remember, they didn't water it. They used like, I mean, there was dry grass clippings that I collected and put on top of the soil bed to use as a, I don't, I'm like brain farting on the terminology. It's like some sort of like topping to make
Mm-hmm.
sure it keeps the soil wet.
Yeah, like a barrier to
Yeah.
maintain the moisture. Yes.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that was a beautiful farm. I loved it. It was ridiculously hot when I was there. It was upwards in the 90s. The record-breaking temperature was 113 degrees, and it's never gotten that hot in that area ever. So that's quite alarming. I wish people would listen to Greta Thunberg more often.
Okay, so what did they have you do any activities with animals? I know you were cooking and harvesting crops. Did they give you any tasks that surrounded taking care of animals at all?
I fed the chickens every morning.
At the
Yeah.
first farm or at the second farm?
At the second farm. The
Okay.
first farm, I would collect the chicken eggs, the eggs. Um, and then the second farm, I would collect the eggs as well and feed the chickens occasionally. The alpacas, the only things I did with the alpacas at the first farm. So every time they overgrazed the plot of land and we didn't move them fast enough, they would somehow find a way to escape, and they'll come up to like the part of the farm that the humans stayed at to let us know, like, hey, like we want to be moved to a different section. So every time they like escape from their like part of the farm, I would just like holler and be like, Uncle Jules, which is Julian. He's the main farmer on the property, and I just would be like yelling Uncle Jules. I'm like, the alpacas are out, but that's the only thing I did with them. um I guess like one thing that I did get to do with them is we collected their poop to use as compost. So alpaca poop is very high in nitrogen, and we use this type of composting system at the first one called thermophilic composting. I cannot explain it very thoroughly. It's in my journal that I lost that had my passport in it. So I don't know that much information about it besides that it's like a percentage of brown matter, a percentage of nitrogen, and a percentage of green matter.
Okay, yes,
So
that's right, actually. I remember learning about this too. When I was doing my master's in Houston, we had a holistic garden as a part of our school, and we had this um a we had Dr. Novak from, I think he was from Texas A&M. He was like a horticulturalist specialist, and he taught us how to I assembled a composter.
that's so cool. I love it.
Yeah, like I had to sit there for a day, like picking out all the parts. It is not easy, by the way, to assemble a composter. It was kind of like, how many people does it take to assemble a composter? Well, apparently five or six. This thing had like 300 parts, like little screws and
Oh my.
sticks and pieces of metal and whatever. Yeah, like 300 pieces. You had to like sit there and like figure out what piece goes where. And yeah, it was really a huge task, but at the end you get this really cool, it was huge, this composter that you I think you cranked it so that it would turn and it would move. I'm not sure if that is also considered what you said, thermophilic composting. um we didn't put any alpaca manure in it. We didn't have access to that. But yeah, I remember that he explained to us, to do layers of brown matter, green matter, and something else, organic matter, so that you can get the best quality soil in the end. So yeah, thanks for taking me back to those days.
It's really interesting because when I first got introduced to composting, I thought it was just like one type of compost. And the first time I got introduced to composting was when I was living up in Mississauga. In Canada, it's fairly normal for households to have a recycling bin, trash, and then compost. Like it's really normal concept. In the States, it's not. You have to like it's not really a thing to compost.
No.
Which honestly, if we just did composting, it would make a huge difference with environmental issues that we have.
By the way, anyone who's interested in composting, you heard it here first. Starbucks
Woo-hoo.
will give you coffee grounds for free. And I thought this was well known to everyone because I always saw it. Like they always have a sign when you, not that, I don't really try to support Starbucks as much as I can, but when you go in on the side of the front door, they usually have a little, like a bookcase, like a little shelf thing that says, take our coffee grounds for your garden. And I've seen that at several locations. And I've also seen a sign at the, like by the cashier that says, ask for our coffee grounds to take to your garden. And every time I've mentioned it to anyone, like any of my friends, no one knows this. And I'm like, it says right there, do you not read? And so even if I don't buy anything, like, okay, well, I've only done this once because like I said, I don't go to Starbucks a lot. But I asked for it and the girl gave me like a whole bag of coffee grounds, and I took that to my grandpa so he can use for his backyard. So and I don't have a house right now, so I don't have a place to start a compost pile or compost bin, but when I do, I plan on doing that. But anyone who lives in a house or rents a house that have space in your backyard, please start composting. Any organic matter that like when you're chopping up vegetables, whatever you're not going to use, go ahead and just throw that there. And like Emily said, there's a bunch of different ways to do it, so it's up to you with the amount of space and time that you have what you want to do. But Yeah, thanks for encouraging us to look more
Yeah.
into composting. And like you said, like in other parts, I know there's certain other states that are much better about it. Texas is not one of them. Canada is really good about it. Other countries are, just used to separating out your recycles and your compost matter, like leaves from your yard or something like that. You don't just throw that into the trash because they'll fine you for it.
Mhm.
So I wish to see that going forward, that the rest of America can act right and and move toward that direction. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you like the podcast, please leave me a 5-star review on iTunes. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, and Facebook at MFMP Pod. And to keep the conversation going, you can use the hashtag MFMPPod on Twitter to share your favorite quotes and memes or comments about the podcast, as well as any questions you have for me that I can potentially answer on future episodes. Or you can always DM me on Instagram as well. And consider supporting the show by visiting patreon.com/manyfaces.manyplaces. Until then, I hope you will stay tuned as we hear more from the many faces of many places.